Hello and welcome to the Daily Bible Podcast. My name is William Hemsworth. Thank you for joining me on today's show. Well, today we continue on in Matthew chapter 12. We're going to look at verses 9 and 10 today. And as you may recall, over the past few days, and since we started in chapter 12 really, we see Jesus having a dialogue with the Pharisees about the Sabbath. And the background is that Jesus and his disciples were walking through a grain field on the Sabbath, and they were hungry and plucked some of the grain, and the Pharisees accused them of breaking the Sabbath by harvesting. And Jesus made the distinction between plucking to satisfy hunger and harvesting, which is for profit, and then declared that he, being Jesus, is Lord of the Sabbath. And that brings us to where we are today, in verses 9 and 10 of chapter 12, which say, "And he went from there and entered their synagogue. And behold, there was a man with a withered hand. And they asked him, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So that they might accuse him." Alright, so after this dialogue, Jesus goes into the synagogue, because it was the Sabbath, it was a time of worship. And so there was a synagogue there. Jesus and his disciples went in to worship on the Lord's Day, on the Sabbath. And we see the Pharisees trying to trap Jesus. There's this man with a withered hand. We don't know what kind of ailment he has, but basically he's not able to use his hand at all. He had some kind of an ailment, some kind of a disability. And they're trying to use this poor man to trap Jesus by asking Jesus, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So, the Sabbath rules of the Pharisees said that people could be helped on the Sabbath only if their lives were in danger. Now, obviously, if the only ailment that this gentleman had was his hand, it wasn't an emergency. It wasn't an emergency. His life wasn't in danger. But we see over the course of the Gospels that Jesus healed on the Sabbath several times, and that none of those healings were life or death situations. None of them were emergencies. We think about the man at the pool of Bethsaida, the blind man, etc., those types of things. You see, if Jesus had waited till the next day, he would have been submitting to the authority of the Pharisees. And of course, Jesus is above that. He is the higher authority. He's that higher authority. And Jesus healed on the Sabbath to prove that authority. So yes, we are to rest on the Sabbath. No, we're supposed to have a day where we can just rest, worship God, and just relax, because God knows we need that rest. However, if there's someone in need, someone who needs help, there's no better time to help someone than at that moment. And that's what Jesus is trying to get across, is that we need to have compassion and mercy, and there's always time for those things. Alright, so God bless you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Daily Bible Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Join me tomorrow, and have a great day, and God bless you.